She was supposed to die that night. Everyone knew it. Everyone wanted it. In the brutal Northlands, where weakness is a death sentence, Kayla Thorne, the pack's forgotten outcast, made a choice that should have killed her. She walked into a forbidden forest during the deadliest blizzard in decades, defying laws that had stood for centuries. What she found buried beneath the ice changed everything, a dying infant with a mark that could topple kingdoms. And when she touched that child, her skin burned with a royal seal that turned her from nothing into the most dangerous woman in the North. Stay until the end to see how an invisible girl becomes an unstoppable force. If you're watching from your city, drop it in the comments below. And hit that like button. Let's get this story to 10,000 likes. Part 1. The Invisible Survivor. The wind didn't just howl in the Gray Tooth Pack territory. It screamed. It tore through the gaps in the wooden structures, ripped at threadbare clothes, and carved lines into exposed skin like a knife made of winter itself. Kayla Thorne had learned long ago not to fight it. Fighting cost energy. Energy required food, and food was something she hadn't earned. She crouched in the shadow of the pack house storage shed, her fingers blue-white and trembling as she worked a rusted nail free from a rotting plank. The nail was small, bent, worthless to anyone else. To Kayla, it was survival. She could trade it to old Marin for half a stale biscuit, maybe a fingerful of grease to rub on her cracked lips. The wood was frozen solid, making her task harder. Each twist of the nail sent splinters into her already damaged hands, but she kept working. Pain was familiar. Pain meant she was still alive. "Still breathing, ghost girl?" The voice came from above. Kayla didn't look up. She knew who it was. Denna, one of the younger pack enforcers, barely 19 but already vicious in the way only the insecure could be. She'd made tormenting Kayla a personal hobby over the past year. "Didn't ask permission to touch pack property," Denna continued, her boots crunching through the ice as she approached. "You know the rules." Kayla's jaw tightened. She did know the rules. She'd been beaten with them often enough. Every scrap, every nail, every piece of discarded trash technically belonged to the pack, and she, being nothing, had no right to anything without explicit permission. "I'm removing a hazard," Kayla said quietly, holding up the bent nail without meeting Denna's eyes. "This could injure someone." Denna laughed, sharp and cold. The sound cut through the wind. "Right, and you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart." She kicked snow onto Kayla's hands, forcing her to drop the nail into the white powder. "You're a scavenger, a parasite. The only reason Alpha Torvin hasn't expelled you is because watching you suffer entertains him." Kayla said nothing. Words were wasted here. She'd learned that at 7 years old when her mother died of winter fever and the pack decided she wasn't worth the cost of raising. No family, no rank, no wolf, because Kayla Thorne had never shifted. In a world where your wolf defined your worth, where your strength determined whether you ate or starved, where the ability to transform separated the living from the barely surviving, Kayla was nothing, less than nothing. She was a ghost in a world that worshipped teeth and claws and dominance. Denna crouched down, her breath visible in the frozen air, forming small clouds that dissipated quickly. Up close, Kayla could see the satisfaction in her eyes, the pleasure she took from this encounter. "You should leave. Run south before the winter kills you, or stay, and let us enjoy the show when you freeze to death in your sleep." It wasn't the first time someone had suggested she leave, but leaving meant dying alone in the wilderness. At least here she had the scraps of civilization, occasional food, some shelter, the faint possibility of surviving another season. Kayla met Denna's eyes for just a moment, long enough to see the cruelty there, the genuine enjoyment of another person's misery. Then she looked away, lowering her head in the submissive gesture expected of her. Denna stood, satisfied with the display of dominance. "Good dog," she muttered, and walked away laughing. Kayla waited until the sound of boots faded completely. Then she dug the nail out of the snow, wiped it clean against her coat, and slipped it into the inner pocket. A coat she'd scavenged from a dead traveler 2 winters ago, still stained with blood she couldn't wash out. The stains had faded to rust brown, but they were permanent reminders of where she stood in the world's hierarchy. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of bruised purple and dying orange. The temperature would drop soon. Dangerous cold, killing cold, the kind that found its way into your lungs and never left. Kayla made her way toward the eastern edge of the territory where the dilapidated shacks stood, structures too damaged for ranked wolves to bother with. too precarious for families, too shameful for anyone with status. She lived in the smallest one, a leaning hovel with walls that let in more wind than they kept out. She passed other pack members on the way. Most ignored her completely, their eyes sliding past her as if she were part of the landscape. A few younger wolves snickered and whispered. One child, no more than 5, threw a rock that hit her shoulder. His mother didn't scold him. Inside her shack, it was barely warmer than outside. She'd stuffed the gaps with moss and mud last autumn, but the frost still crept in, forming delicate crystals on the interior walls that caught the fading light. Her bed was a pile of old feed sacks layered over pine needles. Her pantry was a leather pouch containing 4 acorns, a strip of dried sinew, and a chunk of rock-hard bread she'd stolen 3 days ago from behind the bakehouse. She ate 1 acorn, slowly, methodically, chewing until her jaw ached, trying to convince her stomach it was full, trying to make the meager food last as long as possible. It didn't work. It never did. Hunger was a constant companion now, a grinding ache that had become so familiar she barely noticed it anymore. What she did notice was the cold. It was getting worse each day, each hour. The kind of cold that made your thoughts sluggish, that made you want to lie down and sleep and never wake up. She'd seen it happen to an old wolf last winter. He just sat down against a tree one day and never stood up again. She wrapped herself in every scrap of fabric she owned. 3 layers of torn clothing, the blood-stained coat, and a moth-eaten blanket she'd found in an abandoned den. Then she curled into the smallest possible shape, knees to chest, trying to conserve what little warmth her body still produced. Outside she heard the sounds of the pack, laughter, voices raised in conversation, the crackle of a communal fire. They were roasting meat tonight. She could tell by the smell, rich and tormenting, that drifted through the cracks in her walls. Venison, probably. Or maybe elk. The hunting party had returned successful yesterday. Her stomach cramped painfully at the scent. Kayla closed her eyes and tried to remember warmth. Real warmth. The kind that came from belonging somewhere, from being wanted, from having a place at the fire. She couldn't quite grasp the memory. It had been too long. She woke to shouting. It was deep night now, the kind of blackness that came when clouds smothered the moon and stars, when the world became nothing but varying shades of darkness. The shouting grew louder, Alpha Torvin's voice, harsh and commanding, cutting through the night like a blade. Storms coming in from the shattered ridge. Everyone inside the main halls. Now. If you're caught outside when it hits, you're on your own. Kayla sat up, her breath misting in the air even inside her shelter. A storm from the shattered ridge. That meant a true blizzard, the kind that buried entire hunting parties, the kind that turned the forest into a white graveyard, the kind that killed without mercy or hesitation. She heard the movement of the pack, doors slamming, children being herded inside with urgent voices, the organized chaos of a community preparing for disaster. Footsteps pounded past her shack, heading toward the reinforced central lodges. No one came for her. No one knocked on her door to warn her. No one ever did. Kayla stood on shaking legs and peered through a gap in her wall. She could see them in the distance, illuminated by torchlight, pack members streaming toward the reinforced central lodges, the structures built to withstand northern fury. She watched families moving together, parents carrying children, the strong helping the weak. She watched her world preparing to survive. Without her, she looked at her own walls. They wouldn't hold. The structure was already leaning at a dangerous angle, held up more by frozen mud than actual construction. When the storm hit, this shack would collapse under the weight of snow, or the wind would tear it apart, or the cold would seep through and kill her in her sleep. Her options were simple and brutal. Stay here and die slowly, crushed or frozen. Or her gaze drifted toward the forest, the Whisperwood. It was forbidden territory, a stretch of ancient forest that bordered the packlands to the north. No one went there. The prohibition wasn't just about danger, it was law, enforced by execution. The pack's history was full of stories about wolves who'd entered the Whisperwood and never returned. Or worse, returned changed. Wrong. The Whisperwood belonged to something old, something the Alphas feared but never spoke about directly. But in the Whisperwood, Kayla knew there were caves, deep ones, sheltered ones. She'd seen them once, years ago, before she understood what forbidden meant, when she'd wandered too far during a foraging trip. Natural formations carved into cliff faces, protected from wind and snow. She looked back toward the pack lodges. Warm, safe, reinforced, closed to her, then back to the forest. Forbidden, deadly, unknown, but possible. The wind picked up outside, and she heard the first pellets of ice hitting her walls like tiny bullets. The temperature was dropping fast, faster than she'd expected. Kayla made her decision. She gathered everything she owned, which fit into a single cloth bundle tied with fraying rope. The acorns, the sinew, the bread, a flint stone she'd found, a bone needle, the bent nail. Her entire life fit in a package she could carry in one hand. She wrapped her face with a strip of cloth, leaving only her eyes exposed, and stepped out into the night. The cold hit her like a physical force, driving the air from her lungs. Within minutes, her face was numb despite the cloth, her fingers stiff inside her ragged gloves. The wind tore at her clothes, found every gap, every weak point, every place where fabric had worn thin. Snow began to fall, not gently, but in violent gusts that blinded and disoriented. Kayla lowered her head and pushed forward, one foot in front of the other, focusing on the simple mechanics of movement because thinking about anything else would make her stop. And stopping meant dying. The forest loomed ahead, a wall of black trees barely visible through the white chaos. She could hear the wind changing pitch as it hit the dense canopy, a shrieking, unnatural sound that made her instincts scream at her to turn back, to find any shelter, even her collapsing shack. She didn't. She couldn't. Behind her was certain death. Ahead was only possible death. She'd take possible. The moment she crossed the tree line, the wind lessened slightly, the massive pines providing some shelter from the worst of the storm. But the temperature seemed to drop further, and the darkness was absolute, thick enough that she could barely see her own hands in front of her face. Kayla moved by memory and touch, one hand trailing along rough bark, her feet testing each step before committing her weight. The snow was already knee-deep here, deeper in the drifts, and each step required effort that drained her limited energy. She'd gone perhaps a quarter-mile when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm, a cry. Thin, weak, barely audible over the wind, but unmistakably a cry. A human cry. A baby. Kayla stopped, her heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. It sounded like an infant, the high-pitched wail of something very young and very distressed. Impossible. No one would bring an infant into the whisperwood. No one would abandon a child in a blizzard. It had to be an animal, or the wind playing tricks, or her mind beginning to fail from the cold. The cry came again, fainter now, fading into the storm. Kayla's breath caught. Every survival instinct she'd honed over years of barely living told her to keep moving, to find shelter, to save herself. But her feet had already changed direction, turning toward the sound. She was already going to die tonight, probably. What difference did it make if she died trying to find the source of that cry? She stumbled through drifts that reached her thighs, her legs burning with effort, muscles protesting. The crying grew closer, then stopped entirely. Panic flared in her chest, hot and urgent. She pushed faster, nearly falling, catching herself against a snow-laden tree that dumped its burden on her head. Her eyes strained against the darkness, searching, searching. There. A disturbed patch of snow near the base of a massive fallen log, partially sheltered by the trunk, and protruding from it, barely visible, almost buried, a tiny hand, too small, too still. Kayla dropped to her knees and started digging, her frozen fingers clawing through ice and snow. The cold burned her skin, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Her hands hit fabric, expensive fabric. She could tell even through her gloves, the kind of weave that spoke of wealth, of status, of people who didn't belong in a forest during a blizzard. She dug faster, uncovering a bundle wrapped in what looked like fine wool embroidered with symbols she didn't recognize in the darkness. Careful stitching. Beautiful work. Completely inappropriate for the situation. She pulled it free and brushed the snow away from the tiny face beneath. A baby. Maybe 3 months old, no more. Lips blue, skin pale as death, eyes closed. A perfect little face going gray with cold, not breathing. No, Kayla whispered. No, no, no. She ripped open her coat with numb fingers, buttons scattering into the snow, and pulled the infant against her bare chest, wrapping them both in every layer she had. The baby's skin was ice cold, like touching frozen meat. She rubbed the tiny back with urgent circular motions, breathed warm air over the small face, tried to share what little heat her body still held. "Come on," she begged. "Come on, breathe." Nothing. "Please," Kayla said, and she wasn't sure who she was talking to. "Please, I didn't come this far to find you dead. Breathe." She kept rubbing, kept breathing warm air, kept willing life back into the small body. The baby's mouth opened, a weak, rattling gasp, then a cry, thin and fragile and the most beautiful sound Kayla had ever heard. Relief flooded through her so powerfully her vision blurred. She held the child close, sheltering it from the wind with her own body, and that's when she felt it. Heat. Searing, burning heat against her palm. She looked down and saw light, golden light, impossible and bright, spilling from beneath the infant's wrappings. And where Kayla's hand rested against the baby's back, her skin was burning, the flesh smoking as something branded itself into her palm. She tried to pull away but couldn't. Her hand was locked in place, held by an invisible force. The light intensified, and pain exploded through her hand, up her arm, into her chest. A mark. A symbol. Burning itself into her skin with fire that felt like it was rewriting her from the inside out, changing something fundamental, something cellular. Kayla screamed, but the sound was lost in the wind. The pain reached a crescendo, white-hot and all-consuming, and then the light flared once more, blinding even through her closed eyelids, and then darkness. Oh, she woke to silence. Complete, absolute silence. The storm had passed. Pale dawn light filtered through the trees, turning the snow into a field of diamonds that hurt to look at. Everything was pristine, untouched, beautiful in the way that deadly things often were. Kayla sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. She felt like she'd been beaten, every part of her body aching, but she was alive and warm. That was wrong. She should be frozen solid. She looked down and saw the baby, bundled against her chest, sleeping peacefully. The infant's cheeks were pink, her breathing steady and healthy, tiny hands curled into relaxed fists. Then Kayla looked at her own hand. On her palm, burned into her skin in perfect detail, was a mark, a wolf's head surrounded by interlocking runes, rendered in scar tissue that gleamed faintly silver in the morning light. The design was intricate, beautiful, and absolutely unmistakable. She knew this mark. Everyone in the north knew this mark. It was the seal of the Varkas bloodline, the mark of the Alpha King. Kayla's breath came in short, sharp gasps as the implications crashed over her like an avalanche. This baby, this infant she'd pulled from the snow, was royal, a lost heir. And somehow, impossibly, the mark had transferred to her. Not tattooed, not painted, burned into her skin by magic she didn't understand, couldn't comprehend. A bond. An unbreakable bond between guardian and heir. She'd heard stories about such things, ancient tales from before the Great Wars, when magic was common and bloodlines held actual power beyond mere genetics. But those were myths, stories, things that didn't happen in the real world, except they just happened to her. The baby stirred against her chest, letting out a small, healthy cry. Kayla looked down at the tiny face, now pink with warmth and life. Eyes opening to reveal irises of startling gold, the color of fire, of sunset, of power. "What have I done?" Kayla whispered. But even as she said it, she knew there was no going back. The moment she'd touched this child, the moment she'd chosen to save a life instead of preserving her own, everything had changed. She stood legs unsteady and looked around. She needed shelter, food, protection, and she needed answers. She needed to get back to the pack. The walk back took hours. The snow was deep, the forest treacherous, and Kayla had to stop frequently to rest, to check on the baby, to feed the infant with small amounts of snow melt she warmed against her skin. The baby drank eagerly, which was a good sign, suggesting she was stronger than she'd appeared. Kayla examined the infant more carefully during one of these stops. The embroidered cloth was definitely expensive. Silk woven with gold thread, symbols stitched in patterns that looked like written language. Beneath the outer wrapping was a soft linen gown, tiny and perfect. And there, over the baby's heart, was another mark. A birthmark in the shape of the Varkas seal. Smaller than the one on Kayla's hand, but identical in design. This wasn't just a royal child. This was the heir, the direct bloodline. Kayla's mind raced. She knew the stories everyone knew. Alpha King Ronan Varkas had lost his mate and child during an attack on the royal convoy 6 months ago. The queen had died. The infant daughter had vanished, presumed dead, her body never recovered. The entire north had mourned, and Kayla was holding her. By the time she emerged from the tree line, the sun was high and bright, reflecting off the snow with painful intensity. The pack territory looked different in daylight after a storm. The world had been reshaped, structures buried or exposed, new drifts creating new landscapes. She could see people moving, digging out, assessing damage, working together in the way communities did after disasters. And they could see her. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Kayla walked forward, the baby bundled in her arms, her marked hand clearly visible. She made no attempt to hide it. There was no point. Denna was the first to approach, flanked by 2 other young enforcers. Her expression was twisted with confusion and something that looked like fear. "You survived? How?" Her eyes dropped to the bundle in Kayla's arms. "What is that?" "A child," Kayla said. Her voice was rough from screaming, from the cold, but steady. "Where did you—" Denna's eyes widened as she saw the mark on Kayla's palm, clearly visible where the coat had fallen back. She stumbled backward. That's impossible." Others were gathering now, forming a loose circle around Kayla. She saw shock, suspicion, fear, and something else, curiosity. She'd never had this many people look at her at once. She'd spent her whole life being invisible. "Call Alpha Torvin," someone said, their voice uncertain. "Already here." The crowd parted as Alpha Torvin himself appeared, a massive man with iron-gray hair and a face like weathered stone, scarred from decades of battles. He pushed through the gathered pack members and stopped when he saw Kayla. His eyes went to the mark on her hand, to the baby, back to the mark. His expression hardened into something unreadable. "Where did you get that child?" "The Whisperwood," Kayla said. "She was buried in the snow, dying. I saved her." "And the mark?" "It appeared when I touched her." Torvin's jaw clenched, muscles working beneath the skin. He studied her for a long moment, then reached for the baby. "Give her to me." Kayla stepped back. "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge, a direct refusal to an alpha, grounds for immediate punishment, possibly execution. The crowd collectively held its breath. Torvin's eyes flashed with anger, his wolf rising close to the surface. "That wasn't a request, outcast. That child bears royal markings. She belongs with proper authority, with someone who can protect her, not with wolfless trash." "She bears nothing," Kayla said, her voice quiet but firm. "I bear the mark. The bond is mine." It was the truth, though she barely understood it herself. The mark wasn't on the child, it was on her, which meant whatever magic had created this bond, it had recognized Kayla as the guardian, not Torvin, not anyone else. Her. Torvin took a threatening step forward, his presence heavy and oppressive, meant to make her submit through sheer dominance. "You think that mark makes you important? You're still nothing, a wolfless waste who should have died years ago. Give me the child." He reached out, his large hand coming toward the bundle, and the mark on Kayla's palm flared with light. Power exploded outward from her hand, a shockwave of raw force that sent Torvin stumbling backward 3 full steps. The crowd gasped, several people falling to their knees as the energy washed over them. Snow kicked up in a circle around Kayla, creating a momentary blizzard of her own making. Kayla stood frozen, as shocked as everyone else. She could feel it now, energy humming beneath her skin, foreign and overwhelming, like electricity running through her veins, connected somehow to the mark and the child. Torvin recovered quickly, his face dark with rage and humiliation. Being pushed back by the pack's weakest member in front of everyone was an insult that couldn't be ignored. "You dare!" "I dare nothing," Kayla interrupted, surprising herself with her own boldness. Her voice was shaking but firm. "I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for this, but it's happened, and I won't let you take her." "Then you've signed your death warrant," Torvin said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Maybe," Kayla agreed, "but before you kill me you should know who she is." She pulled back the wrappings just enough to reveal the infant's own birthmark, a smaller version of the Varka seal, placed over her heart, glowing faintly in the daylight. The crowd's reaction was immediate and electric. Whispers erupted, spreading like wildfire through the gathered pack members. The lost heir, King Ronan's daughter, vanished during the attack. She's alive. The prophecy. Torvin's expression shifted from anger to calculation. She could see him thinking, weighing options, considering outcomes. If that child is truly the king's heir, he said slowly, then she needs to be returned to the capital, immediately. The king will want his daughter back. Agreed, Kayla said, which is why I'm requesting safe passage and an escort to the frozen court. Torvin laughed, harsh and mocking. You think the king will see you? You'll be executed the moment you step foot in that castle for daring to touch royal blood with your filthy hands. Then I'll die, Kayla said simply, but I won't hand her over to anyone else. The mark chose me. I don't know why, but I won't betray it. For a long moment, Torvin stared at her, clearly weighing his options. If he killed her now and took the child, he'd be the one who returned the lost heir. The glory would be his. But if the mark rejected him, if the child died in his care, the king's wrath would be devastating. Finally, he smiled, a cold, calculating expression that didn't reach his eyes. Fine. I'll send word to the capital. We'll see what King Ronan has to say about a wolfless outcast claiming guardianship of his heir. He turned to his enforcers. Lock her in the holding cell. Give her food and water. We need her alive for now. And double the guard. If she tries to run, kill her. If anyone approaches her without my permission, kill them too. Strong hands grabbed Kayla's arms from both sides. She didn't resist as they led her away, the baby still cradled against her chest. The crowd parted to let them through, everyone staring. As she passed through the gathered pack members, she heard the whispers, amazement, contempt, disbelief, and fear. Especially fear. But beneath it all, Kayla felt something new, something she'd never experienced before. For the first time in her life, people were looking at her not with dismissal, but with acknowledgement. She existed. She mattered. And that, she was learning, changed everything. The holding cell was a stone room beneath the pack's main lodge, cold but dry and sheltered, infinitely better than her shack. The walls were solid, the floor swept clean, and there was even a small brazier in the corner, currently unlit. They brought her food within the hour. Actual food. More than she'd seen in months. Bread that was still soft, dried meat that didn't require an hour of chewing, even a bowl of warm broth with actual vegetables floating in it. Kayla fed herself mechanically, her mind racing even as her body rejoiced at real sustenance. She ate slowly, carefully, knowing her shrunken stomach couldn't handle too much at once. The baby woke and began to cry. Kayla had no milk to offer, but she made do with broth-soaked cloth, letting the infant suck the moisture and nutrients. It wasn't ideal, but it would work for a day or two. She'd done something impossible tonight. She'd survived the Whisperwood, saved a dying child, and somehow bonded with the heir to the most powerful bloodline in the north. She looked down at the sleeping infant in her arms. The baby was peaceful now, her tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths, completely unaware of the chaos she'd caused simply by existing. "Who are you?" Kayla whispered. "And why did your mark choose me?" The baby didn't answer, of course, but Kayla felt the warmth of the bond thrumming between them, a connection that felt both ancient and new, like something that had been waiting for this exact moment, this exact person. Footsteps approached in the corridor above. The door opened, and Denna appeared, carrying a bundle of cloth. "Clean blankets," she said, her tone stiff and formal. "Alpha's orders. Can't have the royal brat freezing to death in our care." She tossed the bundle onto the floor near Kayla's feet and turned to leave, then hesitated. She looked back at Kayla, her expression conflicted, less hostile than it had been in years. "How did you do it?" she asked quietly. "The power. When you pushed Alpha Torvin back." Kayla shook her head. "I don't know. It just happened." Dennis studied her for a long moment, really looked at her for maybe the first time ever. "You're not wolfless anymore, are you?" Kayla looked down at her marked hand, at the silver scars that gleamed in the dim light. "I don't know what I am." Denna left without another word, but she didn't slam the door. She closed it almost gently. Kayla wrapped the baby in the new blankets, clean, soft, warm, and settled back against the cold stone wall. She found a corner where two walls met, offering support for her back, and arranged herself as comfortably as possible. Tomorrow, or the day after, someone would come from the capital. Someone powerful. Someone who would decide whether Kayla lived or died, whether this bond was real or blasphemy, whether she was a guardian or a kidnapper. But tonight, she was warm, fed, protected, even if it was just a locked cell. And for the first time in her life, she mattered to someone, even if that someone was just a baby who couldn't survive without her. Whatever came next, she would face it. She had no choice. The mark had made sure of that. 3 days passed in the stone cell. Each day, Kayla was brought food, 3 meals, regular and substantial. Each day, guards brought water, clean cloths, everything she needed to care for the infant. Each day, the baby grew stronger, more alert, her golden eyes tracking movement and light. Kayla learned the rhythms of her new charge. The baby liked to be held close. She settled more easily when Kayla hummed, even though Kayla's voice was rough and untrained. She had a strong grip for something so small, tiny fingers wrapping around Kayla's thumb with surprising determination. "You're a fighter," Kayla told her on the second day. "Good. You'll need to be." On the morning of the 4th day, the atmosphere changed. Kayla heard it first. Increased activity above, voices sharp with urgency, the sounds of horses and armor. Something was happening. The door burst open without warning. A man stood in the entrance, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in armor that gleamed even in the dim light of the cell. His face was scarred, his eyes sharp and assessing, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned his own authority. Behind him stood 4 more soldiers, all armed, all watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. "On your feet," the man commanded. His voice was deep, accustomed to obedience. "The king's guard is here. You're coming with us." Kayla stood slowly, the baby in her arms, her legs stiff from days of limited movement. "Where?" "The frozen court," the man said, his eyes dropping to the mark on her hand, then to the bundle she held. "King Ronan wants to see the woman who claims to bear his daughter's mark." His tone made it abundantly clear he thought she was either a liar, a fool, or both, possibly a criminal. "I don't claim anything," Kayla said quietly. "The mark is real. You can see it." "I see a scar," the man replied. "Whether it's genuine or some trick remains to be determined. If you're lying, if you've harmed that child in any way, your death will be slow. Do you understand?" Kayla met his eyes. "I understand, and I'm not lying." The man studied her for another moment, then jerked his head toward the door. "Move. We leave within the hour. Don't slow us down, or we'll tie you to a horse and drag you." Kayla took a breath and walked forward, cradling the baby protectively. As she emerged from the holding cell and climbed the stairs into daylight, she saw them, the king's guard. 20 mounted soldiers in silver armor, their weapons sharp and ready, their horses stamping impatiently in the snow. Alpha Torvin stood nearby, speaking with the lead soldier. He glanced at Kayla as she emerged, his expression unreadable. "That's her?" the soldier asked. "That's her," Torvin confirmed. "And the child?" The soldier approached Kayla, his hand resting on his sword hilt. "I am Commander Drace of the King's Royal Guard. You will surrender the child to my custody for the journey." "No," Kayla said. Drace's expression darkened. "That wasn't a request." "The mark binds me to her," Kayla said, holding up her scarred palm. "I don't know what happens if we're separated, but I won't risk her life to find out." Drace stared at the mark, his jaw working. Finally, he stepped back. "Fine, but you ride with one of my men. If you try to run, if you make any move I don't like, you'll be dead before you hit the ground." "Understood." They put her on a horse with a soldier who smelled like leather and steel. The baby was strapped securely between them, protected from the wind and cold. As the party began to move, Kayla looked back at the Greytooth Pack territory one last time. Denna stood watching from the edge of the gathering. For a moment their eyes met. Then Denna raised one hand in a gesture that might have been farewell. Kayla turned forward and didn't look back again. The real journey was just beginning. And at the end of it waited the most feared man in the north, the Alpha King himself, the man whose daughter she held, the the man who would decide if she lived or died. The journey to the frozen court took 6 days. 6 days of riding through landscapes that grew progressively more hostile, more desolate, more beautiful in their cruelty. The mountains rose higher with each passing mile, their peaks wrapped in clouds that looked like they could swallow the world. The forest became denser, older, trees so massive their trunks would take 10 men holding hands to encircle. Kayla had never traveled this far north. She'd never been anywhere beyond Greytooth territory. Every new vista was overwhelming, intimidating in its scale, its indifference to human existence. The King's Guard didn't speak to her unless necessary. They rode in formation, disciplined and efficient, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Commander Drace led from the front, his posture never relaxing even when they stopped to rest. The soldier Kayla rode with, a man named Garrett, who looked barely older than 20, maintained complete silence for the first 2 days. On the 3rd day, when they stopped to water the horses, he finally spoke. "How'd you really get the mark?" he asked, his voice low enough that the others wouldn't hear. Kayla was sitting on a fallen log, the baby nursing from a cloth soaked in goat's milk they'd acquired from a settlement the day before. "I told you. I touched her. It appeared." "Magic doesn't just appear," Garrett said. "Not anymore. The old bloodlines died out generations ago." "Then I don't know what to tell you," Kayla said. "I'm not educated. I don't know about bloodlines or magic or anything else. I just know what happened." Garrett studied her, his young face thoughtful. "You don't look like someone who'd steal a royal baby." "What does someone like that look like?" "I don't know. Smarter, I guess. More planned. You look like you're making this up as you go." Despite everything, Kayla almost smiled. "That's accurate." Before Garrett could respond, Commander Drace's voice cut through the clearing. "Mount up. We're moving." The baby had grown noticeably stronger over the journey. Her eyes were more alert, tracking faces and movement. She cried less, slept more soundly, and had even begun making small cooing sounds that might have been the beginnings of communication. Kayla found herself talking to the infant during the long hours on horseback, keeping her voice low so the guards wouldn't hear. "Your father is the most powerful man in the north," she whispered on the 4th day. "Everyone fears him. They say he's never lost a battle, never shown mercy to an enemy. They say when his mate died, something in him died too." The baby's golden eyes fixed on her face. "I don't know what he'll do when he sees me," Kayla continued. "I don't know if this mark means anything to him, or if he'll just take you and have me executed for touching you. But I need you to know I didn't save you for a reward. I saved you because leaving you to die wasn't something I could do." The baby made a small sound and gripped Kayla's finger. "I hope that counts for something," Kayla said quietly. On the evening of the 5th day, they crested a ridge and Kayla saw it, the frozen court. It wasn't a castle in the traditional sense, it was a fortress carved directly into the side of a mountain. Stone and ice fused together in architecture that looked like it had grown rather than been built. Towers rose at irregular intervals, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air, walls thicker than houses, gates that could withstand armies. And everywhere, ice. Not the dirty frozen slush of lower elevations, but crystalline ice that caught the setting sun and threw it back in fragments of rainbow light. "First time seeing it?" Garrett asked from behind her. Kayla could only nod. "Yeah," Garrett said. "Everyone reacts that way." They descended toward the fortress as darkness fell. Torches appeared along the walls, thousands of them, turning the structure into a constellation of fire against the black mountain. As they drew closer, Kayla could see guards on the ramparts. Lots of guards. The frozen court wasn't just a residence. It was a military installation, designed to defend against any threat the North could produce. The gates opened as they approached, massive doors of reinforced wood and steel that moved with surprising silence. Inside was a courtyard large enough to hold 100 horses, currently occupied by perhaps 20. Commander Drace dismounted first. "Bring her," he ordered. Garrett helped Kayla down, then handed her the baby. Her legs were stiff from days of riding, and she stumbled slightly before catching her balance. "This way," Drace said, already moving toward an entrance. Kayla followed, acutely aware of the guards flanking her on all sides. They passed through corridors of polished stone, decorated with tapestries depicting battles and ceremonies. Servants in fine clothing stopped to stare as they passed, whispers following in their wake. They climbed stairs. Many stairs. Kayla's breathing grew labored, but she kept pace, refusing to show weakness. Finally, they reached a set of double doors carved with intricate wolf imagery. 2 guards stood watch, their expressions professionally blank. Drace stopped and turned to Kayla. "The king is inside. You will show respect. You will speak only when spoken to. You will make no sudden movements. Is that understood?" "Yes," Kayla said. "If you've lied about any of this," Drace continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous, "your death will be the least of your concerns." He knocked once, then pushed the doors open. The room beyond was enormous, a council chamber with a table that could seat 30 people, currently occupied by only 1. At the head of the table sat Alpha King Ronan Varkas. Kayla had expected someone imposing, someone regal. What she saw was a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same stone as his fortress and left outside to weather. He was massive, easily the largest person she'd ever seen, with shoulders that seemed too broad for any doorway. His hair was black streaked with silver, pulled back from a face that was all hard angles and old scars. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Gray, cold, utterly devoid of mercy. The eyes of someone who'd seen everything and been broken by it. "Your Majesty," Drace said, dropping to one knee. "We've brought the woman from Greytooth Pack as requested." Ronan's gaze shifted from Drace to Kayla. The weight of that attention was physical, pressing down on her like a hand on her throat. "Leave us," Ronan said. His voice was rough, like gravel grinding together. "Your Majesty," Drace began. "I said leave." Drace hesitated only a moment, then stood and withdrew, taking his guards with him. The doors closed with a heavy thud that echoed through the chamber. Kayla stood alone before the Alpha King, the baby in her arms, her marked hand visible. For a long moment, Ronan said nothing. He simply stared, his expression unreadable. "Come closer," he finally said. Kayla's legs didn't want to move, but she forced them forward. She stopped about 10 feet from the table, maintaining what she hoped was a respectful distance. "Closer." She stepped forward until she was directly across from him, the table between them. Ronan stood. The movement was fluid despite his size, predatory. He walked around the table until he stood directly in front of her, towering over her by at least 1.5 feet. "Show me your hand," he said. Kayla shifted the baby to one arm and held out her marked palm. Ronan stared at it for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly he reached out and took her hand in his. His palm was rough with calluses, warm despite the cold room. He traced the mark with one finger, his touch surprisingly gentle. "This is real," he said, and it wasn't a question. "Yes?" Kayla said anyway. "And the child?" Kayla carefully pulled back the blanket, revealing the baby's face. The infant was awake, golden eyes bright and curious. Ronan's breath caught. His hand trembled slightly as he reached toward the baby, then stopped, as if afraid to touch her. "May I?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kayla's heart was hammering, but she nodded and gently transferred the baby into his arms. Ronan held his daughter like she was made of glass, his massive hands cradling her with infinite care. He pulled back the blanket further, found the birthmark over her heart. Something happened to his face. The stone exterior cracked, and for just a moment, Kayla saw raw grief and desperate hope fighting for dominance. "Lyra," he whispered. "My Lyra." The baby made a cooing sound and reached up, her tiny hand touching his scarred face. Ronan's eyes closed. A single tear tracked down his cheek. Then the moment passed. The stone mask returned, harder than before. He looked at Kayla with those cold gray eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. Leave nothing out." So Kayla told him. About the storm. About being left to die. About entering the Whisperwood. About finding the baby buried in the snow. She told him about the mark appearing, about returning to the pack, about everything that had happened. Ronan listened without interruption, his expression never changing, still holding his daughter. When she finished, silence filled the room. "Do you know what you've done?" Ronan finally asked. "I saved your daughter's life," Kayla said. "You entered forbidden territory. You violated laws that carry a death sentence. You touched royal blood without permission. You created a bond with my heir that shouldn't be possible. His voice was flat, listing facts. Any one of those things is grounds for execution. Kayla's throat was dry. I know. And yet you did them anyway. I couldn't leave her to die. Why not? Ronan asked. You owed her nothing. You could have kept walking, found your cave, survived the storm. Instead, you risked your life for a stranger's child. Because I know what it feels like, Kayla said quietly, to be left to die, to be considered not worth the effort of saving. I couldn't do that to someone else, not even to survive. Ronan stared at her, his gray eyes searching her face for something. What's your name? Kayla. Kayla Thorne. Kayla Thorne, he repeated. Wolfless, outcast, the lowest member of your pack, and now bonded to the future Alpha Queen of the North. He shook his head slowly. If I believed in fate, I'd say this was cosmic humor. Do you believe in fate? Kayla asked, then immediately regretted the question. You didn't ask Alpha King's personal questions. But Ronan surprised her by answering. I used to. Before my mate died, before my daughter vanished. Now I believe in survival and strategy. He looked down at the baby in his arms. But this mark, this bond, I can feel it from here. It's real magic, old magic, the kind that hasn't existed in generations. He handed the baby back to Kayla with obvious reluctance. Which means I can't simply kill you and take my daughter back. The bond might harm her if you die. I won't risk that. So what happens to me? Kayla asked. That depends, Ronan said. The council will want answers. They'll want to know if you can be trusted, if the bond can be broken, if you're a threat. Am I? A threat? Ronan's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. I don't know yet, but you walked into a blizzard rather than stay somewhere safe. You defied an alpha to protect a child that wasn't yours. You stood in front of me without begging for your life. He tilted his head slightly. Either you're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably stupid, Kayla said. This time Ronan actually smiled, brief and sharp. Probably. The smile faded. But brave too, I think. Before Kayla could respond, the doors burst open. A woman entered, moving with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable with violence. She was tall, muscular, with white blonde hair braided down her back and eyes like chips of blue ice. Behind her came 3 other people, 2 men and another woman, all radiating authority. Ronan, the blonde woman said, we heard rumors. Is it true? Is she... Her eyes fell on the baby in Kayla's arms. She stopped mid-step. Ancestors preserve us. It's really her. It's really her, Ronan confirmed. Everyone, this is Kayla Thorne. She's the one who found Lyra and bears the guardian mark. Kayla, this is my counsel. That's Sarah, my head of security. Beside her is Marcus, my strategist. The redhead is Helena, who handles logistics. And the quiet one is Theron, my second in command. They all stared at Kayla with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. Sarah approached first, her eyes locked on the baby. May I see her? Kayla looked at Ronan, who nodded. Sarah examined the baby with professional efficiency, checking the birthmark, looking for any signs of harm or distress. Finally, she stepped back. She's healthy. Well cared for, actually. Better than I'd expect from... She trailed off, clearly thinking better of finishing that sentence. From a wolfless outcast? Kayla supplied. Sarah had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I apologize. That was rude. It was honest, Kayla said. I am a wolfless outcast. Those are facts. Marcus stepped forward, his sharp eyes assessing. Show us the mark. Kayla held out her hand. The council members gathered around, studying the scarred seal with intense focus. It's genuine, Helena said, sounding amazed. I've seen the historical texts. This is exactly how the old guardian bonds appeared. But those died out centuries ago, Theron said. His voice was deep and thoughtful. After the purge, when the old magic was hunted to extinction, there shouldn't be anyone left with the bloodline capability to form such a bond. All eyes turned to Kayla. I don't know anything about bloodlines, she said. I don't know why the mark chose me. I barely survived most of my life. I'm nobody. Nobody doesn't get chosen by royal magic, Marcus said flatly. There's something in your lineage, something old. My mother died when I was 7, Kayla said. She never talked about family. I don't know where she came from or who my father was. I have no history. Everyone has history, Helena said gently. Sometimes it's just buried. Sarah turned to Ronan. We need to secure her. If word gets out that the heir has returned and is bonded to an unknown with possible old blood connections, every enemy we have will come looking. Already considered, Ronan said. She stays here, in the castle, under guard. Under guard or under arrest? Kayla asked. Ronan looked at her. Is there a difference? Yes, Kayla said. One means you're protecting me. The other means you're imprisoning me. Which would you prefer? Neither. I'd prefer to leave and go back to my life. You don't have a life to go back to, Ronan said bluntly. The moment you bonded with my daughter, your old existence ended. You're part of this now, whether you want to be or not. The truth of that statement settled over Kayla like a weight. He was right. Even if she could leave, even if she wanted to, the pack would never take her back. She was connected to royalty now. That changed everything. So I'm a prisoner, she said quietly. You're a guest, Ronan corrected. A guest who happens to be unable to leave for her own safety. That's definitely imprisonment. Call it what you want, Ronan said, but you're staying. Before Kayla could argue, a commotion erupted outside the chamber. Shouting, the clash of steel on steel. Ronan's expression hardened instantly. Sarah, on it. Sarah was already moving toward the door, her hand on her weapon. The doors crashed open. A guard stumbled through, blood streaming from a wound on his shoulder. Attack, he gasped. Assassins! They're inside the castle. They're looking for... He never finished the sentence. An arrow sprouted from his throat. He collapsed, choking on his own blood. Behind him, 5 figures in dark clothing poured through the entrance, weapons drawn. Everything happened at once. Ronan moved faster than something his size should be able to move, positioning himself between the attackers and Kayla. Sarah drew twin blades and engaged the first 2 assassins. Marcus grabbed a chair and used it as a weapon. Helena and Theron flanked the exits, cutting off escape routes. Protect the air, Ronan roared. One of the assassins broke through the defensive line, moving with supernatural speed directly toward Kayla. She backpedaled, clutching the baby, her mind racing. No weapon, no combat training, no way to fight. The assassin raised a blade aimed at the infant. Kayla's marked hand blazed with light. Power erupted from her palm, a force she didn't understand and couldn't control. It slammed into the assassin like a physical wall, sending him flying backward into the stone wall with bone-breaking force. The room froze for a split second, everyone staring at Kayla. Then chaos resumed. 2 more assassins rushed her. Kayla raised her hand again, but nothing happened. The power had vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her defenseless. Ronan intercepted them both, moving like violence given form. He killed the first one with his bare hands, snapping the man's neck with brutal efficiency. The second one he grabbed by the throat and slammed into the ground so hard the stone cracked. Sarah finished off her opponents and sprinted to Kayla's side. Get behind me! But there were more coming. Kayla could hear them in the corridor, more footsteps, more weapons. The last assassin in the room ignored all the fighters and made a desperate lunge toward Kayla, a dagger in each hand. Kayla threw herself backward, tripped over the fallen guard's body, and went down hard. The baby flew from her arms. Time slowed. Kayla watched the infant arc through the air, saw the assassin change trajectory to follow, saw the blade descending toward the small, helpless body. The mark on her palm erupted with light again, brighter than before, blinding. The power that burst from Kayla wasn't a push this time. It was an explosion, a detonation of raw force that radiated outward in a perfect sphere. The assassin disintegrated, reduced to ash in an instant. The walls cracked. The table splintered. Everyone in the room was thrown backward by the shockwave. And in the center of it all, Kayla caught her daughter. No, Ronan's daughter, she corrected herself, even in her panic, and held her close as the power finally, blessedly, subsided. Silence fell, broken only by groaning and the settling of dust. Kayla looked up from where she'd collapsed on the floor. The room was destroyed, furniture smashed, walls cracked, bodies everywhere, some dead, some unconscious. Ronan was climbing to his feet, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. He stared at Kayla with something between awe and fear. What, he said slowly, was that? I don't know, Kayla gasped. Her whole body was shaking. I don't know. The baby in her arms let out a wail, startled but unharmed. Sarah groaned and sat up, her face pale. That was old magic, unrestricted old magic, the kind that leveled cities during the Purge. But I'm nobody, Kayla said, her voice breaking. I'm nobody. How can I do that? Ronan walked over and knelt beside her, ignoring his own injuries. His gray eyes searched her face. You're not nobody, he said quietly. You were never nobody. We just didn't know what you were. More guards burst into the room, weapons ready, then stopped at the scene of destruction. Secure the castle, Ronan ordered. Find out how they got in, and bring me whoever is still alive from this group. I want answers. He turned back to Kayla. Can you stand? She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Ronan helped her to her feet, his grip steady and warm. That power, he said. Can you control it? I don't think so, Kayla admitted. It just happens when she's threatened. Ronan looked down at his daughter, then back at Kayla. A guardian bond indeed. Ancestors help us all. He paused. You saved her life. Again. And probably mine as well. I just reacted, Kayla said. No, Ronan said firmly. You unleashed power that hasn't been seen in 300 years to protect my daughter. That's not nothing. Sarah approached, limping slightly. The castle is in lockdown. We're searching for more intruders, but Ronan, if she can do that, if that kind of power is in her... I know, Ronan said. Everyone's going to want her. As a weapon. As a threat to eliminate. As a prize to capture. He looked at Kayla again. Which means you're now the second most valuable person in this castle. Lucky me, Kayla muttered. Despite everything, Ronan's lips twitched. Indeed. He turned to his guards. Take her to the northern tower. The secure rooms. Post a full guard rotation. No one gets in or out without my direct authorization. The northern tower? Sarah asked, her eyebrows rising. That's where you put... I know where I put people, Ronan interrupted. It's the most defensible position in the castle. If more assassins come, that's where I want her. He looked at Kayla one more time. We'll talk more tomorrow. After you've rested. After I've had time to think about what you are and what it means. And what if I don't want to be whatever you think I am? Kayla asked. Ronan's expression softened slightly. Then we'll have that in common, he said. But wanting and being are different things. You are what you are. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Guards surrounded Kayla, gentle but firm, and led her away from the destroyed council chamber. As she walked through the corridors, she could feel people staring, whispering. Word was already spreading. The heir had returned, bonded to an unknown girl who wielded impossible power. Kayla held the baby close and tried not to think about what came next. She'd survived the storm, survived the pack, survived the journey, survived an assassination attempt, but she had a feeling the real test was just beginning. The northern tower room was nothing like the cell at Greytooth Pack. It was larger than any space Kayla had ever occupied, with actual furniture, a bed with clean linens, a table, chairs, even a fireplace already crackling with warmth. Windows looked out over the mountain ranges, though they were barred. Not a prison, Ronan had said. The bars suggested otherwise, but Kayla was too exhausted to care about semantics. She laid the baby on the bed, checking her over for the 10th time. No injuries. The infant seemed completely unaffected by the violence, already drifting towards sleep with the resilience only babies possessed. Kayla's hands were still shaking. She stared at her marked palm, at the silver scars that had just produced enough power to disintegrate a human being. A knock at the door made her jump. "It's Helena," a voice called. "From the council. May I come in?" Kayla glanced at the guards posted inside her room, 2 of them, standing at attention near the door. They made no move to stop the visitor. "Yes," Kayla said. Helena entered carrying a tray of food and a leather satchel. She was younger than Kayla had initially thought, maybe 30, with kind eyes that didn't match the hardness everyone else in this castle seemed to carry. "I thought you might be hungry," Helena said, setting the tray on the table. "And I brought supplies for the little one. Milk, clean cloths, a few other necessities." "Thank you," Kayla said, meaning it. Helena busied herself organizing the supplies while Kayla ate. Roasted meat, bread that was still warm, vegetables she didn't recognize but tasted incredible. Real food, as much as she wanted. You handled yourself well tonight, Helena said quietly. Most people would have panicked. I did panic, Kayla said. I just didn't have time to show it. Helena smiled slightly. Fair enough. She finished with the supplies and sat down across from Kayla. May I speak plainly? Can I stop you? Probably not, Helena admitted. But I'm asking anyway. Kayla nodded. You're in danger, Helena said. Not just from external threats, from people inside this castle. The council is divided about you. Sarah thinks you're a security risk. Marcus thinks you're a political opportunity. Theron is cautiously optimistic. And Ronan, she paused. Ronan doesn't know what to think, which makes him unpredictable. And you? Kayla asked. What do you think? I think you're a terrified girl who got thrust into a situation she never asked for, Helena said. And I think the fact that you're still trying to do the right thing, despite everything, says more about your character than any amount of old magic ever could. Kayla wasn't sure how to respond to that. Helena stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow the real politics begin. The council will want a formal hearing about the bond, about your bloodline, about what happened tonight. It won't be pleasant. Will they try to separate me from her? Kayla asked, glancing at the sleeping baby. Some will push for it, Helena said honestly. They'll argue that the bond is dangerous, that you're untrained, that a wolfless unknown shouldn't have that much access to the air. But Ronan saw what happened when she was threatened. He won't risk breaking the bond until he understands it better. After Helena left, Kayla tried to sleep. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the assassin disintegrating, felt the power burning through her veins, heard the crack of breaking stone. She'd killed someone tonight. Multiple someones, if she counted the shockwave casualties. She should feel something about that. Guilt, horror, remorse. Instead, she felt nothing except a hollow certainty that she'd do it again if necessary. Maybe that made her a monster, or maybe it just made her a survivor. The formal hearing convened the next morning in a different chamber. This one undamaged, circular, with tiered seating that reminded Kayla of an arena. She sat in the center, the baby in her arms, surrounded by the council and at least 24 other people she didn't recognize. Ronan presided from an elevated chair that definitely qualified as a throne, his expression unreadable. Marcus stood first. We've identified the assassins from last night. They were hired mercenaries, not affiliated with any particular pack or faction. Someone paid them well to infiltrate the castle and kill the heir. Who? Sarah demanded. They don't know. The contract was arranged through intermediaries, but the fact that they knew the heir had been found, knew she was here, means someone inside our network is feeding information to our enemies. A murmur ran through the gathered officials. We have a traitor, Theron said flatly. In the castle, or close enough to matter. Multiple traitors, possibly, Marcus continued. The attack was too coordinated, too well-timed. They knew exactly when to strike, exactly where the heir would be. All eyes shifted to Kayla. You think I'm the traitor? She asked, somehow unsurprised. It's a consideration, Marcus said carefully. You appear from nowhere, bonded to the heir under mysterious circumstances, and within hours of arriving, assassins attack. The timing is suspicious. If I wanted the baby dead, I could have left her in the snow, Kayla pointed out, or killed her a dozen times during the journey here. I didn't need to bring her to the castle to arrange an assassination. Unless the goal wasn't to kill her, Sarah interjected, but to infiltrate the castle using the bond as leverage. Get close to Ronan, learn our defenses, feed information to enemies. That's ridiculous, Helena said. She's wolfless. She has no connections, no resources. How would she even contact enemy factions? We don't know what she is, Sarah countered. We know she's not just wolfless anymore. That power last night, that wasn't normal. That was old magic. Dangerous magic. The kind our ancestors went to war to eliminate. The kind that saved all your lives, Kayla said quietly. Sarah's expression hardened. This time. What about next time? Can you control it? Can you activate it at will, or only when the heir is threatened? What if someone uses that against us? What if they threaten the child to force you to unleash that power on targets of their choosing? Kayla had no answer for that. She'd asked herself the same questions all night. Ronan leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. Can you control the power? I don't know, Kayla admitted. I've never felt anything like it before the bond formed. And both times it activated, it was because she was in immediate danger. I don't know if I can make it happen otherwise. Try, Ronan commanded. Kayla stared at him. What? Try to activate it now. Here. Let's see if you have any measure of control. Kayla looked down at her marked hand. She tried to remember the feeling of the power flowing through her, the heat, the light, the absolute certainty that she could destroy anything threatening the baby. Nothing happened. She focused harder, trying to summon that energy, to feel even a spark of what she'd felt before. Still nothing. I can't, she said finally. It only comes when she's threatened. Convenient, Sarah muttered. Or honest, Theron said. Instinctive protective magic would naturally activate during genuine threats, not on command. It's consistent with historical accounts of guardian bonds. Marcus pulled out a leather-bound book, flipping through pages. I've been researching. Guardian bonds were rare even in the old times, formed only when specific bloodline criteria aligned. The guardian had to possess latent magic capability and genuine selfless intent. The heir had to be in mortal danger, and the bond could only form through direct, willful intervention to save a life. All of which describes what happened, Helena said. Or what someone engineered to appear like what happened, Sarah countered. Old magic can be manipulated. Bloodlines can be fabricated. We're taking everything on faith based on the word of someone we know nothing about. Then investigate me, Kayla said, surprising herself. Find out who I am, where I came from. Prove I'm lying or prove I'm not. But stop treating me like a threat while I'm sitting in the middle of your castle, holding the child I risked everything to save. Silence fell. Ronan stood, and the room immediately quieted further. We will investigate, he said. Marcus, send riders to Greytooth Pack. I want a full accounting of Kayla's history. Talk to everyone who knew her mother, anyone who might have information about her bloodline. Theron, review all intelligence reports from the past 6 months. Look for any indication that enemy factions knew about the heir's survival before we did. Sarah, tighten castle security. Find the leak. He looked at Kayla. And you will stay in the northern tower until we have answers. The bond requires you be near my daughter. That keeps you both in one location, easier to protect and monitor. So I'm still a prisoner, Kayla said. You're still a guest who can't leave, Ronan corrected. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Something flickered in Ronan's eyes, amusement maybe, or respect. Fair point, but it's the best I can offer right now. Accept it, or... He trailed off. Or what? Kayla challenged. You'll separate me from her and risk the bond killing her? We both know that's not happening. The room held its collective breath. You didn't talk to the Alpha King like that. But Ronan simply nodded. You're correct, which means we're bound together by circumstance, whether either of us likes it. So we might as well make the best of it. He gestured to the guards. Return her to the tower, double the watch rotation, and bring my daughter to the nursery. I want her examined by the healers, properly outfitted, given everything she needs. Kayla's grip tightened on the baby. She stays with me. She's my daughter, Ronan said, his voice hardening. She belongs in the royal nursery with proper care, not in a tower room with the person bonded to protect her, Kayla interrupted. The person who saved her life twice? The person who can unleash enough power to level this room if she's threatened? She stood, facing him despite the danger. You saw what happened. The bond isn't symbolic. It's real. And I don't know what happens if we're separated, but I'm not willing to find out. Ronan's jaw clenched. For a moment, Kayla thought he might force the issue, might order the guards to simply take the baby. Instead, he sighed. Fine. The healers will examine her in your presence. She stays with you for now, but she's still my daughter, and I will be involved in every decision regarding her care. Understood? Understood, Kayla said. Good. Now get out of my sight before I remember you just challenged me in front of my entire council. The guards escorted Kayla out. As she left, she heard the council members erupt into argument behind her. 3 days passed. Healers came and went, examining the baby thoroughly. She was healthy, developing normally, showing no signs of trauma from her ordeal. They brought proper infant supplies, clothes, blankets, a carved wooden cradle that looked like it cost more than Kayla's entire life. Riders returned from Greytooth Pack with information. Kayla's mother had appeared in the territory 17 years ago, pregnant and alone, refusing to discuss her past. She'd kept to herself, worked as a seamstress, died of winter fever when Kayla was 7. No one knew anything about the father. No one remembered any unusual incidents or displays of power. "A dead end," Marcus reported during one of his daily visits. "Your mother erased her history deliberately. The question is why?" "Maybe she was running from something," Kayla said. "Or hiding something," Marcus countered. "Old bloodline families were hunted during the purge. Many went into hiding, changed their names, scattered to remote territories. If your mother was a survivor of one of those families, she might have been protecting you by staying silent." "Protecting me from what?" Marcus gave her a long look. "From people who want to use power like yours, or people who want to eliminate it." On the 4th day, Ronan visited. He came alone in the evening after the guards had changed shifts. He didn't knock, just entered as if the room belonged to him, which, technically, it did. Kayla was feeding the baby, humming softly. She looked up as he entered, but didn't stop. Ronan stood awkwardly for a moment, then sat in one of the chairs. "How is she?" "Strong," Kayla said. "The healers say she's perfect." "May I—" He gestured toward the baby. Kayla hesitated, then nodded. She finished feeding the infant and carefully transferred her to Ronan's arms. He held his daughter with the same gentle care he'd shown before, his hard face softening as he looked down at her. "She has her mother's eyes," he said quietly. "The gold. My mate's family carried that trait for generations." "What was she like?" Kayla asked. "Your mate." Ronan was silent for a long moment. "Fierce, brilliant, uncompromising. She challenged me constantly, never let me settle for easy answers." He smiled slightly. "You remind me of her, actually, the way you refuse to back down even when you should." Kayla didn't know how to respond to that. "The attack 6 months ago," Ronan continued, his voice hardening. "We were traveling to a summit. 20 guards, full security detail. They hit us at dawn in a narrow pass. Coordinated, professional. They knew exactly where we'd be and when." His jaw clenched. "My mate died protecting Lyra. She put herself between the assassins and the carriage. Took 3 arrows and a blade. Fought until she couldn't stand." "I'm sorry," Kayla said. "The carriage went over a cliff in the chaos," Ronan said. "We searched for days, found wreckage, found blood, but no bodies. I thought—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "I thought I'd lost them both." He looked at Kayla. "And then you appear, carrying my daughter, bearing a mark that shouldn't exist, wielding power no one should have. Do you understand why this is complicated for me?" "I think so," Kayla said. "You don't know if I'm a miracle or a threat." "Exactly." He stood, still holding Lyra. "I want to trust you. You saved my daughter. That means something, but I'm responsible for an entire kingdom. I can't afford to trust based on feelings. So what will you do?" "Keep investigating, keep watching, and keep you close until I understand what you are and what you mean for the future of this realm." He handed the baby back to Kayla. Their hands touched briefly, and Kayla felt something, a pulse of warmth from the mark, recognition of sorts. Ronan felt it too. He pulled back, studying his hand, then her marked palm. "The bond is growing stronger." "I know," Kayla said. "I can feel her now, even when she's sleeping. Her emotions, her needs. It's like we're connected." "Old magic," Ronan muttered. "I wish I understood it better." Before either could say more, shouts erupted from the corridor. Ronan was moving before Kayla could react, his hand on his sword. He yanked open the door to find guards running, weapons drawn. "What's happening?" Ronan demanded. "Breach in the western wall," a guard panted. "Multiple intruders. They're heading for the—" An explosion rocked the castle, so powerful the floor buckled. Kayla stumbled, clutching Lyra. Ronan caught her before she fell. "The tower!" another guard shouted. "They're targeting the northern tower!" Ronan's eyes went wide. "They're after Lyra." The window behind Kayla exploded inward, glass and stone fragmenting in a shower of deadly shrapnel. Ronan threw himself over both Kayla and the baby, shielding them with his body. Through the shattered window came figures, 5 of them, moving with inhuman speed, dressed in dark armor covered with glowing runes. Magic users. "Protect the king!" the guard shouted, engaging immediately. But these weren't normal assassins. They moved through the guards like water, their weapons cutting through armor, their movements too fast to track. One broke through the defensive line, heading straight for Kayla. Ronan intercepted, his sword meeting the attacker's blade with a shower of sparks. They fought with brutal efficiency, matching each other blow for blow. Another attacker circled around, coming at Kayla from the side. The mark on her palm blazed to life. Power erupted, but this time it felt different, more focused, more intentional. It formed a barrier around her and the baby, a shimmering wall of golden light that the attacker's weapon couldn't penetrate. The assassin snarled and redoubled his efforts, his blade glowing with its own dark magic, carving through the barrier inch by inch. Kayla could feel the shield weakening. She pushed harder, pouring everything she had into maintaining the protection. It wasn't enough. The blade pierced through, aimed directly at Lyra's small body. Kayla did the only thing she could think of. She threw herself forward, putting her own body between the blade and the baby. The sword drove into her shoulder, pain exploding white-hot through her entire being. But Lyra was safe. The mark responded to Kayla's injury with volcanic fury. Power detonated outward in a wave that didn't just push the attackers back. It burned them, consumed them, reduced them to ash in seconds. The entire tower room filled with golden light, so bright Kayla couldn't see. She felt the power tearing through her far more than before, far more than she could handle. It was killing her. She was burning from the inside out, the magic consuming her as fuel, and she couldn't stop it. Through the pain and the light, she heard Ronan shouting, felt hands grabbing her, felt the baby being pulled from her arms. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the mark on her palm, blazing so bright it seemed to have replaced her entire hand with pure light. Then, nothing. Kayla woke to agony. Every nerve in her body was on fire, every muscle locked in spasm. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly, couldn't think through the pain. Voices swam in and out of focus. Losing her. Too much power. Bond is killing her. Have to separate them. No. That was Ronan's voice, sharp and absolute. Don't touch her. Don't move the baby. Let the bond stabilize. She'll die, another voice argued. Helena, maybe. She'll die faster if we break the connection now, Ronan said. The power is cycling through both of them. If we separate them, it could kill them both. Kayla tried to open her eyes, managed to get them halfway. She was lying on the bed in the tower room, or what remained of it. Half the wall was gone, open to the mountain air. The baby was beside her, tucked into her side, sleeping peacefully, despite everything. And the mark was no longer just on her palm. It had spread, golden lines of light tracing up her arm, across her shoulder, branching like lightning across her skin. What's happening to me? She managed to whisper. Ronan was there instantly, kneeling beside the bed. The bond is evolving, becoming permanent. The healers say you triggered a full integration when you were willing to die for her. Is that bad? We don't know. This hasn't happened in 300 years. We're making this up as we go. Despite everything, Kayla almost laughed. Story of my life. The pain began to recede slowly, replaced by a strange warmth. She could feel Lyra beside her, feel the baby's contentment, her sense of safety. And she could feel something else. Ronan's fear, his desperation, his determination to protect his daughter at any cost. The bond wasn't just connecting her to Lyra anymore. It was expanding. Ronan, she said quietly, I can feel you. His eyes widened. What? Your emotions. The bond it's connecting to you too. That's impossible, Helena said from somewhere nearby. Guardian bonds only link to the protected individual. Unless the bloodline recognizes pack hierarchy, Marcus's voice said, clinical and curious. If Kayla's magic recognizes Ronan as the alpha, as the ultimate authority over the air, it might extend the bond to include him. Or it's reacting to proximity, Theron suggested. He's been here constantly since she collapsed. Physical presence might be strengthening the connection. Kayla tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder where the blade had struck. Don't move, Ronan commanded. You lost a lot of blood. The healer sealed the wound, but you need rest. How long was I unconscious? 2 days. Kayla stared at him. 2 days? What's been happening? The castle? The attackers? Dead, Ronan said flatly. All of them. Your power saw to that. But we have a bigger problem now. Of course we do. Ronan's expression was grim. Word has spread. About the heir's return, about the bond, about your power. Every faction in the North knows now, and they're coming. Coming where? Here. Some want to pledge loyalty, to align themselves with the restored royal bloodline. Others want to challenge my authority, claim the attack proves I can't protect the heir. And some... He paused. Some want you. The old bloodline families are demanding you be turned over to them for training, for study, for control. I'm not going anywhere, Kayla said. I know, but that doesn't stop them from demanding, or from coming to take you by force if necessary. Sarah entered the room, her expression troubled. Ronan, the northern packs have sent envoys. They're demanding an audience. All of them. They want to see the heir, verify her identity, witness the bond. Let them come, Ronan said. We'll hold a formal presentation. Show them Lyra is alive. Show them the bond is real, and make it clear that anyone who threatens either of them answers to me. That's risky, Marcus said, joining the conversation. It puts both the heir and Kayla in a room with potential enemies. It also puts them in a room with me and the full royal guard, Ronan countered. And it establishes legitimacy. We can't hide Lyra forever. Eventually, we have to prove she's alive and protected. He looked at Kayla. Can you do this? Can you stand in front of the northern packs and show them you're bonded to the heir? Kayla thought about it. Every instinct told her to refuse, to hide, to protect herself and the baby from exposure. But hiding wouldn't work. Ronan was right. They couldn't stay locked in a tower forever. I can do it, she said, but I want a condition. Ronan's eyebrow rose. You're negotiating with me now? You need me as much as I need you, Kayla said. So yes, I want a condition. Name it. If this goes badly, if the packs try to take her or kill me, you get her out. You don't try to save me. You take Lyra and run. Promise me. Ronan stared at her for a long moment. No. No? I don't leave people behind, he said. Not my daughter. Not the woman bonded to protect her. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. All of us. We stand or fall as a unit. Something warm bloomed in Kayla's chest at those words. You barely know me. I know enough, Ronan said. You walked into a blizzard rather than give up. You defied your entire pack to protect a child who wasn't yours. You've been stabbed, nearly killed, and your first thought when you woke up was about everyone else's safety. He paused. That's all I need to know. Kayla didn't know what to say to that. The presentation is in 3 days, Ronan continued. That gives you time to heal, time to practice standing without falling over, time to prepare. Helena will help you. She's good at making people look more important than they are. I heard that, Helena called from across the room. You were meant to, Ronan said, standing. Rest, heal, and try not to explode any more walls. We're running out of tower. He left, taking most of the council with him. Only Helena remained, settling into a chair beside the bed. He likes you, she said once they were alone. He tolerates me, Kayla corrected. No, he tolerates council meetings and diplomatic negotiations. He likes you. I've worked with him for 5 years, and I've never seen him show this much consideration for anyone except his mate. Helena smiled slightly. It's interesting. It's complicated, Kayla said. Everything in this castle is complicated, Helena agreed. But some complications are worth it. She produced a small book from her bag. In the meantime, I thought you might want to learn about what you're walking into. This contains information about the major northern packs, their leaders, their allegiances. If you're going to face them, you should know who they are. Kayla took the book gratefully. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Helena said. Some of these people would kill you just for existing. Others would try to use you as a weapon. Very few will actually support you, but the ones who do might make the difference between survival and disaster. She stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. The bond is changing you. Not just the mark spreading, but you're different, stronger, more confident. Don't lose that. You're going to need it. After Helena left, Kayla opened the book and began to read. 3 days to prepare for the most dangerous moment of her life. 3 days to learn how to be someone worth protecting. 3 days before everything changed again. She looked down at Lyra, sleeping peacefully beside her, completely unaware of the storm gathering around them both. "I hope I'm ready for this," Kayla whispered. The mark on her palm pulsed with warm light, as if the magic itself was answering. Ready or not, the Riesel test was coming. The great hall of the frozen court had been built to intimidate. Kayla understood that now as she stood at its entrance, staring at the vast chamber that could easily hold 500 people. Massive columns rose toward a vaulted ceiling carved with scenes of ancient battles. Torches lined the walls, their light reflecting off ice formations that had been incorporated into the architecture itself, creating an otherworldly glow. And it was full. Pack leaders from across the north had answered Ronan's summons. They filled the tiered seating that surrounded the central floor, their eyes hungry and calculating. Kayla could feel their stares like physical weight, assessing her, judging her, deciding whether she was threat or opportunity. "You don't have to do this," Helena said quietly beside her. Over the past 3 days, she'd become something close to a friend. The only person in the castle besides Ronan who treated Kayla like a person rather than a problem to solve. "Yes, I do," Kayla said. She wore new clothes provided by Helena, simple but well-made, deliberately chosen to walk the line between common and noble. Not trying to be something she wasn't, but not appearing beneath notice either. The mark had stopped spreading after that second night, but it was still visible. Golden lines tracing from her palm up her forearm, occasionally pulsing with faint light. No amount of clothing could hide it, so Helena had decided to make it a statement instead. "Let them see it," she'd said. "Let them see the proof that the bond is real." Lyra was in the nursery, protected by a dozen guards, and separated from the hall by multiple secured corridors. The distance made Kayla's chest ache. The bond didn't like separation, but Ronan had insisted. "If something goes wrong, if this turns violent, I want her as far from danger as possible," he'd said. Kayla had agreed, though every instinct screamed at her to keep the baby close. "The Alpha King approaches," a guard announced. The hall fell silent. Ronan entered from the opposite side, flanked by his council and personal guard. He wore full ceremonial armor, black and silver, designed to make him look even larger and more imposing than he already was. His expression was carved stone, showing nothing. He took his place on the raised dais at the center of the hall, and Kayla walked forward to stand beside him as they'd rehearsed. Not behind him like a servant, not in front like a shield. Beside him, as an equal partner in whatever came next. The whispers started immediately. Ronan let them build for a moment, then raised one hand. Silence fell instantly. "Leaders of the North," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the massive space. "You've come seeking proof that my daughter lives. You've come questioning the bond that protects her. You've come to assess whether the royal line remains strong." He paused. "I'll give you all three." He gestured to a guard, who disappeared through a side entrance. Moments later, a woman in healer's robes appeared, carrying Lyra. The baby was dressed in royal garments, tiny but unmistakable, embroidered with the Varka seal. Her golden eyes were alert and curious, scanning the crowd without fear. A collective gasp ran through the hall. "My daughter," Ronan said simply. "Lyra Varkas, heir to the throne, alive, healthy, returned to us through circumstances that defy explanation but cannot be denied." The healer brought Lyra to the dais, and Ronan took his daughter with visible tenderness. He held her up for all to see, turning slowly so every section of the hall could witness. "The birthmark," someone called out. "Show us the birthmark." Ronan carefully pulled aside the baby's clothing, revealing the Varka seal over her heart. The mark seemed to glow slightly in the torchlight, unmistakable and genuine. More whispers, these ones tinged with awe and relief. An older man stood in the front tier, white-haired, scarred, emanating authority. Kayla recognized him from Helena's book, Alpha Gregorian of the Iron Peak Pack, one of the most powerful leaders in the North. "The heir lives. That's a blessing beyond measure," Gregorian said. His voice was gravelly but sincere. "But it raises questions, Your Majesty. Where has she been these 6 months? How did she survive? And who is this woman you've placed beside you?" "Valid questions," Ronan acknowledged. He looked at Kayla. "This is Kayla Thorne, formerly of Greytooth Pack. She found my daughter dying in the Whisperwood during the great storm 3 weeks ago. She saved Lyra's life at tremendous personal risk, and in doing so, she formed a bond that has not been seen in our world for 3 centuries. He held out his hand to Kayla. She took it, and he guided her forward, displaying her marked palm to the assembly. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some people stood, shouting questions. Others recoiled. A few actually drew weapons before their neighbors restrained them. "Old magic!" someone shouted. "Impossible! Blasphemy! Proof of the ancient bloodlines!" Ronan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Silence!" The hall quieted, though the tension remained thick enough to choke on. "The bond is real," Ronan continued. "We've tested it extensively. The mark cannot be faked, cannot be removed, and responds to genuine threats against the heir. Kayla Thorne has demonstrated both the capability and the will to protect my daughter, even at the cost of her own life." A woman stood, younger than Gregorian but no less imposing, wearing the colors of the Frostbite Pack. "And what are her qualifications, beyond this mark?" "She's wolfless, Your Majesty. Everyone knows this. A wolfless outcast from a minor pack suddenly bonded to the most important child in the North? It's suspicious. It reeks of manipulation." Kayla felt anger flare in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. This was exactly what Helena had warned her about. The attacks would come from all sides, dressed up as concern or tradition. "My qualifications are simple," Kayla said before Ronan could respond. Her voice was steady, projecting farther than she'd expected. "I was willing to die in a blizzard to save a stranger's child. I was willing to defy my alpha to keep her safe. I was willing to walk into this castle knowing I might be executed for touching royal blood. And I was willing to take a blade meant for her when assassins attacked." She paused. "I don't have a wolf. I don't have status or training or political connections. But I have this mark, and I have the certainty that I'll do whatever it takes to keep her alive. If that's not qualification enough, then kill me now and take your chances with whoever the bond chooses next." The hall went dead silent. Several pack leaders looked stunned. A few actually smiled, impressed perhaps, or amused by her audacity. Alpha Gregorian's expression was unreadable. "Bold words, but words are easy. Can you demonstrate this bond? Can you prove it's more than an elaborate deception?" "How would you suggest I prove it?" Kayla asked. "Show us the power," Gregorian said. "The reports claim you can channel destructive magic through the mark. If that's true, demonstrate it. Here, now." Kayla's stomach dropped. "I can't activate it at will. It only responds to genuine threats against the heir, it says." "Convenient," the Frostbite Alpha said. "Or perhaps it's because the mark is a fake and you have no real power at all." "The mark is real," Ronan said, his voice dangerous. "I've witnessed the power myself. It saved our lives during the attack." "So you say," another pack leader called out. "But we have only your word, Your Majesty. And with respect, you're emotionally compromised. Your daughter has returned from the dead. You want to believe in this bond. That doesn't make it real." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Kayla could feel the situation slipping away. They'd come here to establish legitimacy, to prove the bond was genuine. Instead, they were being accused of deception, of manufacturing a guardian to secure political support. She looked at Ronan, saw the frustration in his eyes, the calculation as he tried to figure out how to salvage this. And she made a decision. "You want proof?" Kayla said loudly. "Fine, I'll give you proof, but not through demonstration, through investigation." The hall quieted, curiosity replacing some of the hostility. "The heir was taken 6 months ago," Kayla continued, speaking quickly before she lost her nerve. "Someone orchestrated that attack. Someone knew where the royal convoy would be, knew when to strike, knew how to breach your security. And that same someone has been trying to kill her ever since she returned." She turned to address the entire assembly. "The assassins who attacked the castle, they knew she was here within hours of our arrival. They knew which tower she'd be in. They had magical weapons capable of piercing defensive wards. That level of coordination requires resources, information, and planning." "What's your point?" Gregorian asked. "My point is that the real threat to the heir isn't standing on this dais," Kayla said. "It's sitting in this hall. Someone here, one of you or someone in your service, is feeding information to our enemies. Someone wants the heir dead badly enough to keep trying despite multiple failures." The accusation landed like a bomb. Pack leaders erupted in outrage, shouting denials and counter-accusations. "That's treason," someone yelled. "You dare accuse us? This is a distraction." Ronan let the chaos build for a moment, then whistled, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the noise. "She's right," he said once he had their attention. "We've known for weeks that there's a leak somewhere in our network. The attacks are too precise, too well-timed. Someone is betraying us." He looked at Kayla, and she saw understanding in his eyes. He knew what she was doing, shifting the focus, turning the assembly's suspicion inward rather than outward. "So here's what we're going to do," Ronan continued. "We're going to find the traitor, and Kayla is going to help us." Marcus stepped forward from the council tier. "Your Majesty, with respect, she has no training in investigation or security." "She doesn't need training," Ronan interrupted. "She needs to be bait." Kayla's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Ronan turned to her, his expression grave. "The bond makes you valuable. Valuable enough that our enemies will try to take you. So we let them try. We announce that you're being moved to a secondary location for safety. We make it look vulnerable. And when they come for you, we follow them back to their source." "You want to use her as a lure," Helena said, sounding horrified. "Ronan, that's dangerous." "I know." He looked at Kayla. "But it's also the fastest way to identify our enemies. They've proven they want the heir. If they think they can get to her by capturing you, they'll take the opportunity." Kayla's mind raced. This was insane. Deliberately putting herself in danger, trusting that Ronan's forces could protect her and track the attackers simultaneously. But it was also exactly the kind of bold move that might work. "If I agree," she said slowly, "I want conditions." Ronan's eyebrow rose. "You're negotiating again?" "You're asking me to be bait. Yes, I'm negotiating." Despite the tension, several pack leaders actually laughed. "Name your conditions," Ronan said. "Lyra stays here in the most secure location possible, with people we absolutely trust. No exceptions, no matter what happens to me." "Agreed. I want to choose my own security detail. People I feel comfortable with, not whoever the council assigns." Ronan hesitated, then nodded. "Within reason. You can't choose incompetent guards just because they're nice to you." "I'm not an idiot," Kayla said. "I want competent people. I just want a say in who's watching my back." "Fair enough. Anything else?" Kayla took a breath. "If this works, if we find the traitor, I want the accusations against me dropped. I want recognition that the bond is real and that I'm acting in good faith. No more councils questioning my loyalty, no more threats of separation or execution." "You want official recognition as guardian," Gregorian said from the audience. "Legitimacy." "Yes," Kayla said simply. Ronan studied her for a long moment. "And if it doesn't work? If you're captured or killed, then you were right to doubt me, and you move forward without me. That's not— Those are my conditions," Kayla said firmly. "Take them or don't. But I'm not playing bait without some assurance that I'm not just a disposable tool." The hall watched this exchange with rapt attention, pack leaders leaning forward, fascinated by the dynamic between the Alpha King and this wolfless girl who kept challenging him. Finally, Ronan smiled, genuine this time, with something that looked almost like pride. "Agreed. All conditions accepted." He turned to the assembly. "You heard her terms. I'm formally authorizing this operation. Kayla Thorne will be relocated to the Eastern Outpost tomorrow under light guard. We'll spread word that she's being moved for her protection while we investigate her background." "And you expect the traitor to simply reveal themselves?" the Frostbite Alpha asked skeptically. "I expect them to try for her," Ronan said. "And when they do, we'll be ready." He looked at Kayla. "Last chance to back out." Kayla thought about the baby in the nursery, thought about the mark on her palm, thought about every moment since that night in the blizzard when she'd chosen to save a life instead of her own skin. "I'm in," she said. The assembly erupted again, but this time the energy was different. Not hostile, but electric with anticipation. Gregorian stood. "If you're serious about this, Your Majesty, Iron Peak Pack will provide support. We have trackers who can follow anything, and we'd be honored to help protect the Guardian and heir." Other packs began pledging support as well, caught up in the moment, the drama of it. Ronan accepted their offers with diplomatic grace, his council already making notes about logistics and coordination. But Kayla barely heard any of it. Her mind was already racing ahead to tomorrow, to the moment when she'd deliberately put herself in danger and trust that the people around her wouldn't let her die. After the assembly dispersed, Helena found Kayla in the corridor outside the Great Hall. "That was either brilliant or suicidal," Helena said. "I haven't decided which." "Can it be both?" Kayla asked. "Unfortunately, yes." Helena fell into step beside her. "You know what you've done, right? You've made yourself the center of everything. If this works, you'll be a hero. If it fails, you'll be dead and remembered as a fool." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" Kayla stopped walking, considering the question seriously. Was she okay with it? A month ago, she'd been nobody, invisible, forgotten. Now she was volunteering to be bait in a political trap that could get her killed. "I spent my whole life trying to survive," she said quietly. "Trying to be small enough that no one noticed me, weak enough that I wasn't worth bothering with. It didn't work. I almost died anyway." She looked down at her marked hand. "But then I chose to save someone instead of myself, and everything changed. So no, I'm not okay with the risk, but I'm more okay with it than I am with going back to being invisible." Helena smiled. "Good answer." She paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to survive this. You're too stubborn to die." "Let's hope you're right." Ronan found her later that evening after Lara had been fed and put to sleep in the heavily guarded nursery. "You surprised me today, Ika," he said, joining her by the window in her tower room. The wall had been repaired, though the new stonework was still visible, different from the old. "By being reckless?" Kayla asked. "By being strategic. Turning the Assembly's suspicion into support for your plan, that was smart. I just didn't want to stand there and be interrogated anymore." "It was more than that," Ronan said. "You took control of the situation, made them react to you instead of you reacting to them." He paused. "My mate used to do that. Drive me crazy, but it was effective." Kayla wasn't sure how to respond to being compared to his dead mate. "I'm scared," she admitted instead. "About tomorrow. About what happens if this goes wrong." "Fear's appropriate," Ronan said. "Fear means you understand the stakes. It's the people who aren't scared who get themselves killed." "That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be." He turned to face her fully. "But I want you to know, I meant what I said earlier. We don't leave people behind. If something goes wrong tomorrow, we will come for you. Every resource I have, every soldier, every favor I can call in. You won't be alone out there." "Why?" Kayla asked. "Why do you care? You barely know me." Ronan was quiet for a moment. "You saved my daughter, twice. That would be enough on its own. But it's more than that." He gestured to the mark on her hand. "The Bond chose you. Out of everyone in the North, everyone who could have found Lyra that night, the magic chose you. I don't believe in accidents. I think there's a reason you were the one in that forest." "What reason?" "I don't know yet," Ronan admitted, "but I intend to find out, and I can't do that if you're dead." He left shortly after, leaving Kayla alone with her thoughts. She spent the night going over the plan again and again. The eastern outpost was a fortified way station about 10 miles from the main castle, used for housing travelers and storing supplies. She'd be taken there in a small caravan, deliberately underguarded to appear vulnerable. Ronan's elite forces would follow at a distance, hidden but ready to intervene. The goal was to let any attackers think they had an opportunity, then follow them when they retreated or attempted to extract information from her. It was a solid plan. It was also terrifying. Morning came too quickly. Kayla, dressed in travel clothes, said goodbye to Lyra. The baby was too young to understand, but Kayla felt better having done it, and met her assigned escort in the courtyard. Garrett was there, the young soldier from the journey to the castle. He smiled when he saw her. "Volunteered for this," he said. "Figured you'd want at least one familiar face." "Thank you," Kayla said, genuinely grateful. The other guards were professionals chosen by Sarah, competent but not the absolute best, maintaining the appearance of a standard security detail rather than a royal protection unit. Ronan appeared just as they were mounting up. He approached Kayla's horse, speaking quietly enough that others wouldn't hear. "The mark," he said. "If you're in real danger, if the situation becomes life-threatening, the bond will activate. Trust it. Don't try to control it. Just let it do what it's designed to do." "Protect the air," Kayla said. "Protect you," Ronan corrected. "The bond has evolved. It's not just about Lyra anymore. It will defend you because you're necessary to defend her. Kayla hadn't considered that. How do you know? Because when you were stabbed, the power activated to save you, not just in response to threats against Lyra. The bond is invested in keeping you alive now. He paused. So don't do anything stupidly heroic. Trust the magic, trust your guards, and come back alive. I'll try. Don't try. Succeed. The journey to the eastern outpost was uneventful. They traveled through forests and across frozen streams, the landscape beautiful in its harshness. Kayla kept expecting an attack at every turn, but nothing came. They reached the outpost by midday. It was smaller than she'd expected, a square stone building with a courtyard, watchtower, and stables. Defensible, but not impregnable. The staff welcomed them, showing Kayla to a room on the second floor. It was comfortable, better than her tower room had been initially, actually, with a window overlooking the forest. Now we wait, Garrett said, posting himself outside her door. Waiting was worse than traveling. Kayla couldn't settle, couldn't focus on anything. She paced the room, checked the window repeatedly, jumped at every sound. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Maybe they'd been wrong. Maybe the traitor wasn't going to take the bait. Maybe... The window exploded inward. Kayla threw herself backward as glass showered the room. 3 figures in dark clothing dropped through the opening, moving with the same inhuman speed she'd seen in the castle attackers. More magic users. "Garrett!" she shouted. The door burst open, but one of the attackers was already there, slamming it shut and wedging it with supernatural strength. Garrett pounded from the other side. "Kayla!" The lead attacker approached her, a woman with cold eyes and a blade that hummed with dark energy. "Kayla Thorne, you're coming with us. Cooperate, and you might survive." The mark on Kayla's palm began to glow. "I don't think so," Kayla said. The woman smiled. "We were hoping you'd resist." She lunged, blade aimed at Kayla's throat. Not to kill, but to incapacitate. The mark blazed to life, and power erupted from Kayla's hand. But this time, it wasn't just destructive force. It was focused, controlled, forming a barrier that caught the blade and held it inches from Kayla's skin. The woman's eyes widened. "Impossible! You shouldn't be able to—" Kayla pushed, and the barrier expanded, throwing all 3 attackers backward. The door finally broke open, Garrett and the other guards pouring through. But the attackers were already moving, one of them grabbing Kayla despite the mark's resistance. Another opening a portal, actual magical portal, swirling with dark energy. "No!" Garrett lunged, but he was too slow. The attacker dragged Kayla toward the portal. The mark screamed with power, but Kayla made a split-second decision. She stopped resisting. Let them take her. This was the plan. Get captured, let them think they'd won, track them back to the source. She went limp, and the attackers pulled her through the portal. The last thing she saw was Garrett's horrified face. Then the world twisted, and she was somewhere else entirely. The world reformed around Kayla in fragments. Stone walls materializing, torchlight flickering into existence, the smell of damp earth and something else. Something chemical and wrong. She hit the ground hard, her shoulders screaming where the old wound hadn't fully healed. Hands grabbed her, yanking her upright before she could get her bearings. "Secure her," the woman who'd led the attack commanded. "And suppress the mark. I don't want any surprises." Someone clamped a metal cuff around Kayla's wrist, cold, inscribed with runes that immediately made her skin burn. The glow from her mark dimmed, the connection to the bond muffling like sound heard underwater. Panic clawed at her chest. She could still feel Lyra, could still sense the baby's distant presence, but the power was locked away. Inaccessible. Exactly what they'd wanted. Kayla forced herself to breathe, to think. She'd let them capture her. This was the plan. Ronin's forces would be tracking the portal signature, would be coming. She just had to survive until they arrived. The room they'd brought her to was underground. She could tell by the way sound echoed, by the lack of windows, by the oppressive weight of earth above. It was large, clearly designed as some kind of ritual space, with a circular pattern carved into the floor and more of those glowing runes covering the walls. And it wasn't empty. A man stood at the far end of the chamber, his back to her, studying something on a stone table. He was tall, well-dressed in expensive robes that marked him as nobility or wealth. When he turned, Kayla recognized his face from Helena's book. Alpha Christoph of the Shadow Ridge Pack, one of the northern leaders who'd been at the assembly, one of the people who'd pledged support to Ronan. "Well done, Mara," Christoph said to the woman who'd captured Kayla. "I wasn't certain the bait would work, but it seems our intelligence was correct. She's every bit as foolishly brave as reported." Mara smiled coldly. "She stopped resisting at the end, went limp. Let us take her. She wanted to be captured." "Of course she did," Christoph said, approaching Kayla with casual confidence. "They're tracking us. Ronan's elite forces are probably mobilizing as we speak, following the portal residue, preparing their dramatic rescue." He smiled. "They're going to be disappointed." Kayla kept her expression neutral. "Why are you doing this?" "You pledged loyalty to the king." "I pledged to support his cause," Christoph corrected. "His cause of finding the traitor, which I am absolutely committed to, just not in the way he expects." He circled her slowly, assessing. "You're the key to everything, Kayla Thorne. That mark, that bond. It's not just protection. It's a connection to power that hasn't existed in centuries, power that could reshape the entire North." "I'm not giving you anything," Kayla said. "You don't have to give it," Christoph said. "We're going to take it. That's what this chamber is for. These runes, these preparations, we're going to transfer the bond, rip it from you, and implant it in someone more suitable." Kayla's blood went cold. "That's impossible. The bond can't be transferred. It chose me. It chose you because you met the criteria in that specific moment," Christoph said. "Latent magical bloodline, selfless intent, physical contact during mortal danger. But magic is just energy following rules. If we recreate the conditions, if we force the transfer at the moment of your death, the bond will seek a new host. And we'll make sure that host is someone who understands how to use real power." He gestured to the corner of the room, and Kayla's heart sank. A woman sat there, bound and gagged, someone Kayla didn't recognize, but who was clearly terrified. Young, maybe 20, with the look of someone who'd been groomed for this moment. "Meet your replacement," Christoph said. "She's from one of the old bloodlines we've kept hidden for generations. She has the magical capacity, and she'll have the selfless intent because she'll be saving the air from you when you go mad and threaten the baby's life." "Ronan will never believe that," Kayla said. "Ronan is emotionally compromised. He wants to believe you're genuine because you brought his daughter back. But when you're dead and the bond has transferred to someone with proper credentials, someone from a known bloodline who can demonstrate controlled power, he'll accept it. Especially when we explain how you were secretly working with the original kidnappers, how you engineered the entire situation to infiltrate the castle." The pieces clicked together in Kayla's mind. "You took Lyra in the first place. You orchestrated the original attack." "Not personally," Christoph said. "But yes, I funded it, planned it, made it happen. The goal was never to kill the heir. It was to take her, hide her, then rescue her at the perfect moment using our own guardian candidate. But you complicated things by finding her first." His expression hardened. "So now we adapt. We take the bond from you, eliminate you as a variable, and proceed with the plan. The heir lives, but she grows up bonded to someone loyal to me. And through that bond, through that influence, I gain control of the next generation of royal power." Kayla's mind raced. The suppression cuff prevented her from accessing the bond's power, and even if she could reach it, using it might kill the innocent woman Christoph planned to use as her replacement. But she wasn't completely helpless. "You're making a mistake," Kayla said quietly. Christoph laughed. "Really? How so? You think the bond is just about power and protection. But it's more than that. I can feel it. It's about connection, about genuine care. You can't fake that. You can't force it. Even if you transfer the mark, even if your candidate meets all the technical criteria, the bond won't work the same way. It won't protect like it did for me." "We'll see," Christoph said. "Mara, prepare the ritual. We begin as soon as—" The chamber door exploded inward. Ronan came through first, moving like a storm given form, his sword already drawn and dripping with blood. Behind him came Sarah, Marcus, and at least 20 elite guards, all armed and armored for war. "Stand down!" Ronan roared, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Christoph didn't look surprised. In fact, he smiled. "Right on time, Your Majesty. I was counting on your predictability." He raised his hand, and the runes on the walls blazed to life. The chamber transformed. Barriers of magical energy sprang up, cutting off the exits. separating Ronan's forces from each other and from Kayla. She watched in horror as individual soldiers were isolated in glowing cages, unable to reach each other or coordinate. "Did you really think I wouldn't plan for your arrival?" Kristoff asked. "This entire facility is designed to contain and neutralize superior forces. You're trapped, Your Majesty. And while you watch, helpless, I'm going to complete the ritual and take control of your daughter's future." Ronan slammed into the barrier separating him from Kristoff, but it held. He could see Kayla, could see her trapped and bound, but couldn't reach her. "If you harm her," Ronan said, his voice deadly quiet, "there is no corner of this world where you'll be safe from me." "Empty threats from a caged king," Kristoff said dismissively. He turned to Mara. "Begin." Mara approached Kayla with a blade, not steel, but something that looked like crystallized darkness, humming with corrupt magic. "This is going to hurt," Mara said, almost apologetically. "The bond won't want to leave. It'll fight, but it will break, and you will die, and your death will create the opening we need." She raised the blade. Kayla closed her eyes, reaching for the bond despite the suppression cuff, despite the pain, despite everything telling her it was impossible. She thought about Lyra, about the baby's golden eyes, her tiny hands, her complete trust. She thought about Ronan's determination to protect his daughter, about Helena's kindness, about Garrett's loyalty. She thought about the moment in the blizzard when she'd chosen to save a life instead of her own. And the bond answered, not with the explosive power from before, with something quieter but deeper, a warmth that spread from her core, pushing back against the suppression, finding cracks in the magical restraints. The mark on her palm blazed to life, brighter than ever before, and the cuff shattered. Mara stumbled backward, shocked. "That's impossible. You keep saying that," Kayla said, her voice strange even to her own ears, layered, harmonizing with something ancient and vast. "But you don't understand what this bond is. It's not a tool. It's not a weapon. It's a promise." She stood, and the ropes binding her simply dissolved, unable to hold against the power now flowing through her. "I promise to protect her," Kayla continued, taking a step forward, "to keep her safe no matter the cost. And that promise doesn't care about your barriers or your rituals or your plans." Kristoff's confident expression cracked. "Mara, kill her, now!" Mara lunged with the dark blade, but Kayla raised her marked hand and the weapon disintegrated before it could connect. The power was different this time. Kayla could feel it, could almost understand it. Not destruction for its own sake, but surgical, purposeful. It knew what needed to be protected and what needed to be removed. She turned her attention to the barriers holding Ronan's forces. "You designed this chamber to contain conventional power," Kayla said to Kristoff, "but you have no idea what you're actually dealing with." She pressed her hand against the nearest barrier, and the mark's light spread through the magical structure like fire through paper. The barrier collapsed, then the next one, then all of them in a cascading failure that Kristoff clearly hadn't anticipated. Ronan was free. So were his soldiers. "Take him," Ronan commanded, pointing at Kristoff. But Kristoff was already moving, running toward a secondary portal that had opened at the far end of the chamber, his escape route. Kayla could have stopped him, could have destroyed the portal, could have struck him down. Instead, she did something else. She pushed her consciousness through the bond, following the connection not just to Lyra, but to the entire network of magic that Kristoff had woven through this place. She could see it now, the ritual patterns, the energy flows, the carefully constructed spell meant to transfer the guardian bond, and she understood how to corrupt it. With a thought, Kayla inverted the ritual. Instead of taking the bond from her, it began pulling at Kristoff's own magical reserves, draining the power he'd accumulated over years of preparation. Kristoff screamed as he felt the drain, stumbling at the portal's edge. "What are you doing?" "Proving something," Kayla said quietly. "You wanted to control this power, to use it for your own gain. But real power, the kind that protects instead of dominates, can't be stolen. It can only be given." She released the inverted ritual, letting it collapse, and the feedback hit Kristoff like a physical blow. He fell through the portal, and it snapped shut behind him, leaving only silence. Ronan approached Kayla carefully, his sword still drawn but lowered. "Are you all right?" Kayla looked down at her hands. The mark had spread further during the confrontation, golden lines now traced up both arms, across her shoulders, forming intricate patterns that looked almost like armor. I don't know, she admitted. I feel different, more than I was, but still me, if that makes sense. It doesn't, Ronan said, but I'll take it. He gestured to his soldiers. Secure the chamber. Find that woman Christoph was going to use as the replacement guardian, and search this entire facility. I want every piece of evidence, every document, every name of everyone involved in this conspiracy. The guards moved efficiently, already finding hidden rooms and archives. Sarah approached, her expression a mixture of awe and wariness. What you just did, that was beyond anything we've seen before. You didn't just use the bond's power. You controlled it, shaped it, used it for something other than destruction. It's evolving, Marcus said, joining them and staring at Kayla with undisguised fascination. The bond is adapting to her, or she's adapting to it. Either way, she's becoming something new. Something dangerous, Sarah added. Something necessary, Ronan corrected. He looked at Kayla. You could have killed Christoph. Why didn't you? Because he's more useful alive, Kayla said. He ran through that portal scared and drained. He'll make mistakes, lead us to other conspirators, and... She paused. Because I'm not a killer. I'm a protector. There's a difference. Ronan smiled, genuine and warm. Yes, there is. They found extensive records in Christoph's archive. Names of co-conspirators, details of the original attack on the royal convoy, plans for future operations. It was everything they needed to dismantle the conspiracy completely. The woman Christoph had intended to use as Kayla's replacement was freed and questioned. She'd been coerced, threatened into cooperation by promises that her family would be killed if she refused. Ronan offered her protection and a place in the castle if she wanted it. She declined politely, just wanting to go home and forget this nightmare. By the time they returned to the frozen court, word had already spread. The guards Ronan had left behind had reported the attack, the portal, and the dramatic rescue. The entire castle was buzzing with speculation and rumor. Kayla went straight to the nursery. Lyra was awake and fussy, picking up on the stress through the bond. The moment Kayla took her, the baby settled, cooing softly and reaching up to touch Kayla's face. I know, Kayla whispered. I was scared too. But we're okay. We're both okay. She felt Ronan's presence before she saw him, the bond now extending far enough to sense his emotions. Relief, exhaustion, and something else. Something warmer. She missed you, Ronan said from the doorway. I missed her, Kayla said. I thought, when they suppressed the mark, when I couldn't feel her clearly, I thought I might lose her. But you didn't. You broke through a suppression cuff that should have been unbreakable, defeated a conspiracy that's been years in the making, and saved not just my daughter, but potentially the entire realm. He paused. And you did it without killing anyone unnecessarily. That takes a kind of strength most people don't have. Kayla looked up at him. What happens now? Now we finish this, Ronan said. We use Christoph's records to identify and arrest every conspirator. We root out the corruption that's been festering in the northern packs. And we rebuild, stronger than before. And me? Kayla asked. What happens to me? Ronan was quiet for a moment. What do you want to happen? It was a question Kayla had never been asked before. In her old life, what she wanted had never mattered. She'd survived by accepting whatever scraps she was given, by never asking for more. But that Kayla was gone. The girl who'd walked into a blizzard had died in the snow, and something new had taken her place. I want to stay, Kayla said. I want to protect Lyra. I want to help build whatever comes next, and I want to be recognized for what I am, not just as the guardian, but as someone who belongs here, who has value beyond just the mark. Done, Ronan said simply. I'll convene the council tomorrow. We'll make it official. You're the recognized guardian of the heir, with all the rights and privileges that entails. You'll have status, resources, protection under royal decree. And when people object, when they say I'm still just a wolfless outcast pretending to be something more, Ronan's smile was sharp. Then they can take it up with me. And I promise you, that conversation won't go well for them. The formal ceremony happened 3 days later. The Great Hall was packed again, but this time the atmosphere was different. The major conspirators had been arrested in coordinated raids across the north. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Kristoff's own records had condemned him and his allies, and the pack leaders who'd supported Ronan, who'd pledged aid during the crisis, were now gathered to witness the official recognition of the Guardian bond. Kayla stood before the assembled nobles in new clothing, not common, not noble, but something in between. A Guardian's uniform, designed specifically for her, marking her as something unprecedented. Ronan addressed the crowd from his throne, Lyra in his arms. 3 weeks ago, my daughter was returned to me against all odds. She was found by someone with no status, no wolf, no reason to risk everything for a stranger's child. But Kayla Thorne did it anyway. She saved my daughter. She formed a bond that proves the old magic still exists in this world, and she has defended Lyra's life repeatedly, at tremendous personal cost. He stood, handing the baby to Helena, and descended to where Kayla waited. The Guardian bond is real. The power is real, and the woman bearing that bond has proven her worth beyond any doubt. So I'm making this official, with the authority of the throne and in the presence of these witnesses. He drew his sword, not a threat but a ceremonial gesture. Kayla Thorne, do you swear to protect the heir Lyra Varkas with your life, to guard her against all threats, to serve the throne with honor and integrity? I do, Kayla said, her voice steady. Then by my authority as Alpha King, I recognize you as guardian of the realm, protector of the royal line, and member of this court with full standing and privilege. He touched the flat of the blade to each of her shoulders. Rise, Guardian Kyla, and know that you are no longer an outcast. You are one of us. The hall erupted in response, some cheering, some simply acknowledging, a few still skeptical but unable to deny the reality in front of them. Alpha Gregorian was the first to approach after the ceremony. I owe you an apology, he said gruffly. I doubted you, questioned your legitimacy. I was wrong. You were cautious, Kayla corrected. That's not wrong. It's smart. Gregorian smiled. Diplomatic and generous. You'll make a fine guardian. He glanced at Ronan. And perhaps something more. In time. Kayla felt her face heat, but before she could respond, other pack leaders were approaching, offering congratulations, making alliances, treating her like someone who mattered. It was overwhelming and surreal, and everything she'd never imagined for herself. Later, after the crowds had dispersed and the formalities had ended, Kayla found herself on one of the castle's balconies, looking out over the mountain ranges that had terrified her only weeks before. Thinking about running, Ronan's voice came from behind her. No, Kayla said honestly, just thinking about how much has changed. He joined her at the railing. Are you happy with how things turned out? Kayla considered the question carefully. Happy is complicated. I'm content, purposeful. I have a place here, people who depend on me. That's more than I ever had before. But, Ronan prompted, but I still don't fully understand the bond, or what I'm becoming. The mark keeps spreading, the power keeps growing. I'm afraid of what I might turn into. Then we'll figure it out together, Ronan said. You're not alone in this anymore, Kayla. Whatever changes come, whatever the bond makes you into, you have support. You have allies. He paused. You have family, if you want it. Kayla looked at him sharply. Family? Lyra loves you, Ronan said simply. She's bonded to you in ways beyond just magic. You're raising her, protecting her, caring for her. That makes you family in every way that matters. And you? Kayla asked quietly. What am I to you? Ronan was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I don't know yet, he admitted. Something important, something I didn't expect. My mate she was everything to me. I thought when she died, that part of my life was over. But you've made me reconsider what's possible. He looked at her directly. I'm not promising anything. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you in it. As guardian, as advisor, as... He trailed off. As whatever we figure out along the way. Kayla's throat was tight. That's enough. More than enough. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. Below them, the frozen court buzzed with activity. A kingdom rebuilding, a conspiracy dismantled, a future taking shape. And at the center of it all, an outcast who'd become a guardian. A wolfless girl who'd proven that power came not from what you were born as, but from what you chose to be. Kayla thought about that night in the blizzard, about the choice she'd made to save a dying child instead of herself. She'd thought it was the end of her story, but it had only been the beginning. 6 months later, Kayla stood in the same great hall where she'd been formally recognized, but this time the occasion was different. A coronation. Not hers. Lyra was still an infant, years away from any kind of rule. But Ronan had decided to formalize the succession, to make it clear that his daughter would inherit the throne and that her guardian would stand beside her when that day came. The ceremony was elaborate, filled with ritual and tradition that Kayla was still learning, but the meaning was clear. The royal line was secure, the future was stable, and the guardian bond was recognized as essential to both. As she watched Ronan place a small circlet on Lyra's head, symbolic, temporary, but meaningful, Kayla felt the weight of responsibility settling more firmly on her shoulders. This was her life now. Protecting this child, serving this kingdom, standing against whatever threats emerged. But she also felt something else. Pride. She'd survived the impossible, saved a life that had changed everything, proven that worth wasn't determined by birth or status or the presence of a wolf. The girl who'd been invisible, who'd frozen in a leaning shack while the pack celebrated without her, was gone. In her place stood Guardian Kyla Thorne, protector of the realm, bearer of ancient magic, and family to the most powerful bloodline in the north. And when the ceremony ended and Lyra reached up to grip Kayla's finger with her tiny hand, when Ronan stood beside them both and the crowd acknowledged them as a unit, guardian, heir, and king, Kayla finally understood what she'd found in that frozen forest. Not just a child to save, but a purpose worth living for, a family worth protecting, and a future worth fighting for. The mark on her palm pulsed with warm light, the bond stronger than ever, connecting her to Lyra and through her to this entire realm. She'd chosen to save a life instead of her own, and in doing so, she'd saved herself.